Good morning, everybody. I am absolutely amazed that I even have this many people in here at 8:30 in the morning at the MIX conference listening to me talk about Office. I really totally appreciate everybody coming. And I also, first of all, understand that I'm pretty much the oddball out of every single session at MIX. So I did my best with demos to actually make this pretty interesting in terms of kind of showing you really what Office is all about. In terms of, as the title says, front-ending the web with Office. And it's really, the session's really more oriented to give you an idea of the investments we've made in Office from a platform perspective as well as a tools perspective. So I'm Rob Barker, and we've already had some gentlemen down in the front, so politely making fun of my name, which I totally appreciate. And I'm a senior program manager in the Office team. So in my particular responsibility, as well as my team's responsibility, is really about platform enablement. So anything that you read on MSDN, architecture stuff, white paper, sample code, videos, how-to articles, that's my team that produces that. So there's really two things that I like to do at sessions that I give. This is my first time speaking at MIX. I typically do PDCs, tech eds, and things of that nature that are very developer, ISV, systems integrator oriented. One of the big things that I like to get out of my sessions is I'm a fairly interactive speaker, so I hate just sitting here and constantly doing slides. It's kind of boring. And it's really interesting for me to be at MIX because of the fact that I think just the elements of Web 2.0 and how we think about Office and the things that you all are building is how can we take some of your feedback and some of the ideas that you have and concerns that you have in terms of the way you develop and the way you think about integrating your services into Office potentially, are really about things that I can take back to say, hey, these are the kinds of materials that we need to deliver to kind of help you build different types of solutions. Maybe things that we haven't even thought of. And that's really my goal in life, is to always, my focus is developers and architects, and it's really about connecting those people with building these types of solutions. So I took this really kind of crazy way of creating my presentation, and literally any slide that has a lot of text on it, anything that's underlined, which is fairly tag-oriented looking, these are the core elements that I want you to take away. So really, this session is really all about talking about Office and the things and the investments and technologies and tools that we've made, as well as the fact that Office is, we think about this as our next generation platform for developing solutions. And I really want to focus a lot of the session time on the tools strategy and the investments that we've made to help you build these types of solutions. And then I'm doing my best to have just as many demos as possible versus a typical Office session would have more text than demos. I'd rather spend more time in demos with you to kind of show you really what can be done. So I think it's important to kind of say, why is Office at MIX? What's the big deal with Office being at MIX? You guys are here learning about Ajax and Silverlight and WPF and all these other great technologies. And think about how Office kind of leverages those technologies. You think about how Office is we don't just simply kind of look at ourselves in a black box to say, oh, Office is this, these are the types of apps we do, and that's the only thing that we do. We really are all about kind of consuming all of our other internal technologies to say, how can we showcase better how to build next generation applications with Office? So if you look at the basics of, and these are all materials that we've researched, and when we think about Office and the users at home and the users at work. So billion plus users worldwide on the internet. They're spending about 8 hours a week, and they're basically doing web browsing, sharing photos, doing Flickr, doing all those types of activities. But when you look at the people at work, they're spending 20 plus hours in email, in document creation. And when I say document creation, I'm really talking about anything document-oriented. Presentations, spreadsheets, Word documents, publisher files, all those different types of things. I don't simply think about Word documents. Now, here's the big difference. This is the huge difference between Office when you think about what people do at work and what people do at home. So people at home, they're looking for the next killer app to use. They're looking for a YouTube, they're looking for a Live, they're looking for an Office Live, all those different types of applications that they can use on the web, online, and be able to share and collaborate and communicate with whomever else that they need to, family, friends, colleagues, whatever. But when you look at the differences with the at-work crowd in being, the business priorities for people at work, and this is predominantly where people always put Office. They say, these are the areas. Sure, Office is a business productivity tool. It's about apps. It's about integrating line of business data. It's about exposing information to your end users. And these are the priorities. So you can kind of see the numbers, 1 through 10 that I'm showing. These are the top 5 that we've picked. And these are the top 5 areas that we've made investments in Office to kind of bubble up better application development experiences, better end user experiences in terms of surfacing this type of information. So you'll see another slide a little bit later on in the deck from the standpoint of, where does the technology align to these types of business priorities? And then really the technology trends. This is why you are all here. Right? You're learning about basically all of the technology trends that are delivering this, the web as a platform, Ajax, Silverlight, all the tools that go along with creating those types of experiences. And really, what I want to do today is to show you, what? Not living in a web browser is the only way to be able to consume WPF or to be able to use Silverlight. You can actually experience these same types of dynamic apps right inside of Office as well. And I think it's an interesting opportunity for people to think about because 500 million users have Office on their desktops. That's half the mark of internet users. It's like, why not begin thinking about exposing your services and making them sticky in Office so that when they're sitting in email, they can actually use your services directly from Outlook versus having to go to a browser and do something. It's kind of that constant battle that we call the swivel chair worker. It's that person that sits in Outlook, does a bunch of work, does a bunch of stuff in documents, swivels around and goes to SAP and does a bunch of stuff. Cut, paste, put back in. Really, it's all about whether you think it's a Web 2.0 thing or whether it's a line of business integration. It's all about integrating the experience for that user in a very contextual fashion. If I'm in email and I'm looking at a customer, why not expose all that data about that customer right in the environment that they're sitting in and using versus going to a browser or going to another app? That's really what we think about nowadays in terms of building Office applications. So this is really this is a really interesting, we have about 100 different types of images like this. Where we go way into the back of thinking about the old way that we developed Word, right? How many people here actually use Word for Windows 1.0? Nice. Oh, that's awesome. But now think about this experience, right? When we created Word for Windows 1.0, it was all about DocGen. We wanted something to build rich text. We didn't think about, how do I extend the experience? How do I extend the toolbars? How do I integrate? How do I consume web services? How do I do all these things? Well, this is kind of the now. This is what we have nowadays in the experience of Office. And I've very, very specifically picked this first picture because you'll notice, and it's actually a little bit hard to see, but if you look in the title bar, this is actually an Office 2003 application, right? I'm actually here to talk about Office 2007, but anybody that has Office 2003 today, and I was talking to the gentleman in the back, he said, hey, do I have to upgrade Office because I just got Vista? You don't. You don't have to upgrade Office to get this great experience and be able to deliver these types of applications, right? So everything that you're looking at, that's a custom task pane. They do have integration into the tool and menuing system. It's a very rich application. It doesn't even look like Excel, really. Right? So, and this is actually consuming online materials, right? It's actually consuming pictures from the web, all that different type of stuff. Again, another example, and this is an example that's very enterprise-oriented. So this is a demonstration that we have that integrates with SAP. It's all about exposing flight information so that you can build packages. It's got custom task panes, custom ribbons, all those different things. And actually, let me ask one question. So custom ribbons, does anybody know what the ribbon is? Great, so we have some people that don't know what the ribbon is, and I will get to that, but to point it out, and I have no idea, this is the ribbon up here. These are all the ribbon buttons. These, we have lots and lots of different control types, and I'm actually going to show you how to develop this entire application. So you'll see what the experience is like when you're talking about developing these types of apps. This is another example. Now, you would probably look at this example immediately and say, yeah, what's the big deal, man? It's a browser. Yeah, but if you look a little bit closer at it, this is actually an Outlook email message. This is an Outlook email message that is actually has a custom add-in for viewing RSS feeds. So once again, I'm delivering that experience inside of Outlook without having this person to actually go to these web pages and view these feeds. Again, and I was going through my deck the other day, and I've realized that literally almost all my screenshots are from Outlook. Again, this is another email message. But this email message, it's a little bit difficult to see, but right over here, you have the message tab. So that would actually get you back into the core email message so that you could do responses or whatever else you wanted to do. But inside this email message, when it came in, this is actually a custom app. So when that email message came to me, I actually have a custom application that's embedded inside of that message. It's retrieving web service data, whatever else it's going to do. But the whole point is, and it goes back to my thing about being contextual. It's about sitting in the environment and working where you need to work. Typically, this person would have had to go to another app and look at the same material. But why not just deliver it to them in that same experience that they're already used to? This is another app that we're going to develop today. So what we've done here is, this is integrating Flickr services. So Flickr offers an API that you can actually consume. So we've built a wrapper around this Flickr API. So now you can actually have Flickr content show right up in a custom Outlook form region, which is this area down here. So we're going to build this very application today. So you can show, this was the attempt to let people kind of begin to see the difference with Office. Right? It's not about just line of business data. I've actually now am part of the Flickr community. I can share photos with my friends and my family, and I can assign contacts. I can associate them with Flickr accounts. So when I get email from them, I can actually see their latest photos that they posted. It's just another experience that you can begin to embed inside the applications. And don't think Outlook is really the only potential here. Think about PowerPoint or Word or Excel and how you can really utilize those things. Excel, perfect example of being able to take photos or music or videos and actually do this type of integration, because what's Excel good at? It's good at organization of data. Being able to kind of have that repository of information using Excel's filtering, sorting capabilities, but also integrating these types of services from the cloud. This is another example that we'll build today. And this is all about consuming Windows Live services. And this is actually two different things that's happening here. This is, again, an email message that I have sales information. It's a very line of business, enterprise-oriented example, but I've got a custom Outlook form region. I have consuming data from a database, and then I can actually take that data, map it to Live, so I can build a map of all of my sales leads and where they're all going to. Again, this is an email message, so I've embedded the same experience inside that message so that when my salespeople get this material, they know exactly what they need to do and how they can begin interacting with that data. So it's the gratuitous marketing slide. And really the biggest thing to take away from here is it's actually two things. One is when we think about Office, Office is a unified platform now. So everybody that talks about Office, it's almost immediately when you begin talking to somebody about Office, they go, oh, you mean Word, you mean Excel, you mean PowerPoint. We don't mean that anymore. We think of Office as a software plus services platform, right? So we have all of our clients. And then at the same time, we have our back end. We have Microsoft Office SharePoint Server, which is providing a lot of that great integration experience between the clients and our services on the server side. So that's the biggest thing that we really try to begin telling people and explaining and helping them understand really what we mean by Office as a platform. It's been this, I've been doing Office evangelism for 7 years now. And this has been my 7-year thing. It's talking about Office as a platform. It's a very, very hard discussion, and we recognize that internally. I mean, I've been living this for a very long time. You know, and Office is not about macro development anymore. Office is about managed code development. It's about building very, very rich applications that I showed you in those several screenshots. Along with thinking about Office as a platform, we also want people to understand really about what we consider our next generation applications that are built on the platform. And those are what we consider OBAs, Office Business Applications. So there's a ton of information on Microsoft.com and on MSDN that's all about OBAs. Well, those sites, those blogs, those developer portals on MSDN, those are all our team that own those. So really being able to sit here and talk to you and listen to your questions or talk to you afterwards, it really helps us structure the types of information and content that we deliver to help you not only do development work, but also help you talk to your customers and your end users about what these things are and really how they can actually help in business. So this is, apologize, it's a little hard to read. This is really the all-up view of how we think about Office in a marketecture way, right? This is not a true architecture slide. It's all about marketecture. And I think the core elements to point out here, and one is this is very enterprise-looking, right? I mean, this has got line of business data. It's got Office business applications up top, like Duet. Is there anybody here familiar with Duet? So Duet, just very quickly on that, Duet is a joint relationship between SAP and Microsoft in terms of building Office business applications and taking SAP, exposing that data inside of Office, and having people be able to consume that and use that in a very contextual fashion. So we consider Duet one of our first generation Office business applications as a primary example. And then there's tons of information off of Microsoft.com in terms of Duet and walkthrough demonstrations and things of that nature. Very, very much like the screenshots that you saw earlier, it's very much what like Duet offers. It's all about that immersive experience inside of Office. Probably the most important things to point out are the actual three, the tools piece, the clients, and then the Office SharePoint server. So number one, you're here to talk about Web 2.0 stuff, Silverlight, WPF, consuming web services, all those types of things that really live in the cloud. And we think of the platform, the core elements of the platform is what we call MOS, which is Microsoft Office SharePoint Server. A little bit shortened, so I'm just going to refer to that as MOS going forward so I don't have to constantly repeat that name. So to us, MOS is our service center, right? These kind of top-level bullet points of search and workflow and the business data catalog, these are all of our core services that we talk to people about in terms of being able to build these types of applications that I showed you earlier, right? It's all about using the business data catalog, which is our latest technology that allows you to connect into a line of business system via metadata so that you can expose entities that are part of your SAP implementation, your CRM implementation, enterprise resource planning, whatever it might be. It's all about exposing that type of information inside of MOS. And then once you've exposed that type of stuff inside of MOS, it then becomes natively available to your clients. So you can begin thinking about taking the business data catalog and integrating it into your custom task panes, or having a custom ribbon drive some of that information back into SharePoint Server. So there's lots of integration that we've thought about from an experience standpoint to be able to build these types of rich applications. You know, we've got workflow. Workflow, understandably, is our first generation inside of Office. I'm not sure if there's any workflow sessions here this week, but from an Office standpoint, we allow for some very sophisticated workflow customizations to happen in two fashions. One, you can use Office SharePoint Designer to do those customizations. And I know some people might say, wait a minute, I'm an ASP.NET dev, I don't like using SharePoint Designer. But SharePoint Designer was renamed for a very specific purpose because it was called Front Page before. Front Page was kind of that ubiquitous web experience. Here's how I do my HTML editing, blah, blah, blah. But now, SharePoint Designer is very, very focused on being that core customization tool for SharePoint. You don't have to crack open Visual Studio to do this customization. You can go ahead and do this customization inside of SharePoint Designer. Workflows, data views with web parts, lots and lots of rich experiences that you can build using a very sophisticated tool, but not having to write any code. Then we have like Excel services. How many people here have seen or even been to other sessions, maybe at different conferences, that have talked a little bit about SharePoint and the underlying technologies? Have you heard about Excel services? Have you seen it? Okay, so some people haven't seen it. I see some nodding heads, I see some hands. If I get the chance, I'll just show you a very, very basic example of Excel services, which to us is that services in the cloud view of being able to take my spreadsheet, push it up somewhere, and have somebody else that doesn't have Excel to be able to manipulate all of the information within that spreadsheet. So it's, again, all of these services are kind of coming together from a platform perspective to help us deliver these rich types of applications. These are the same services that you can take advantage of to do these types of things, even if it isn't enterprise-oriented, right? Office is not the same app platform or the same applications anymore. It's not, oh, I just need to create a document or I need to send email. It's a rich, immersive experience now, and that's what we want people to begin understanding. And, finally, I have a bunch of slides on it, but we go the full stack with tools. So our tool suite, when you think about building the types of applications that I showed you earlier, is all about Visual Studio. Specifically, Visual Studio Tools for Office. And if I have to be precise, it's Microsoft Visual Studio Tools for the 2007 Microsoft Office System 2005 Second Edition. Now, if anybody can repeat that multiple times at 8:30 in the morning in Vegas, I would be very, very impressed. But the thing is that our tool stack is so sophisticated now for building Office solutions. It's not just about web parts. It's not about Windows Forms. It's not about WPF. It's this whole comprehensive and immersive experience. If you're an ASP.NET dev today, all the same skills that you have, you can build Office solutions. There's no difference. You're using namespaces. You're using all the same constructs in C# and VB.NET, whatever you're used to. You can build those same types of things inside of Office now. This is the eye chart of the day, and that's a serious eye chart, too. This is really, so you'll have access to these slides. This is really just a viewpoint of what we consider these, the opportunities that we look at for building these types of solutions. Again, when you look at this offline, you'll notice that a lot of these are very enterprise-oriented. Right? It's about content management. It's about verticals and horizontal industry perspectives. I don't know if some of these play into the world that you live in terms of the types of solutions that you're looking to develop. But they'll at least give you some ideas to say, these are the areas that we know people are focusing on. We know we have systems integrators that are in these areas, and we know we have independent software vendors that are developing solutions like this. So these aren't things that we're making up. These are actually application categories that people are developing very, very rich solutions based on Office. These were a couple of attempts to really show you from the conference standpoint of Web 2.0 and thinking about Ajax and thinking about Silverlight and those types of things in terms of what are the types of scenarios that would really help maybe understand a little bit more of why Office is even at MIX. And it's things talking about service consumption. And that's really the underpinnings of the talk is all about service consumption. How do I build an app and then consume some service in the cloud? Could be in my four walls, could be in the cloud somewhere. It really doesn't matter. But when you think about doing this type of stuff, you really want to look at aligning yourself with the right applications, with the right experience for what you want to deliver. Perfect example is if you're looking at calendaring and photos and those types of things, you would probably want to stick with Outlook and developing your add-ins within Outlook. That's the whole idea behind the Flickr concept, is adding my contacts, associating a Flickr account, and having that Flickr information show up in my messages. It's really a way to begin collaborating and sharing information in that fashion. If you're going to do document generation, obviously it's probably going to be Word. If it's invoice generation, it's either going to be Word or Excel. And in those cases, you should be taking advantage of our platform, meaning Microsoft Office SharePoint Server, and a lot of the rich eventing models and everything else that we have sitting behind the core of that platform, and using our open XML file formats to generate that information. You know, how many people here have ever run Word or Excel on the server? Oh, one person. You know, the pain that's involved with that, right? It's not a supported way of doing anything. But that's how people looked at creating documents, invoices, reports, whatever it was, and saying, fire up Word, fire up multiple instances, see if I can get all the threads to be working simultaneously and having my reports generated. Well, now we have a pretty darn good solution, and that's the open XML file formats. Being able to generate that stuff on the fly using the namespaces is so easy nowadays. It's scalable, it's performant, and it's now a standard. So these are the types of things that you should be thinking about and leveraging our core services. So when you think about, and if you think about, developing Office add-ins or extensibilities or whatever, think about leveraging all of the investments that we've made. Because if you don't look at it from a comprehensive standpoint, you might even be short-circuiting your own self. Right? You might be banging your head against the wall several times and not realizing, oh, I'm not supposed to fire up Word on the server. I should be using file formats. These are the types of things you always make sure to investigate, kind of the end-to-end scenario to make sure that you're using those right technologies. And again, this gets back to my point as well from a standpoint of the content that we create. And the content we create, it's not from Microsoft. You know, that's the one thing I kind of divorce myself of. I don't do my content generation and ideas and everything else with my team and saying, what should we do for Microsoft today in terms of generating content? It's really about generating content that everybody sitting in these chairs needs. It's about helping you build your businesses and solutions more effectively. So anything that we take away from any session that we ever do, good or bad, we take it back and we really use that to think about what are the types of things that we should be thinking about for you, not forcing on you. So that's a very, very different, different viewpoint, I think, than some other companies do take. So now, what do I build? Right? So you're sitting here thinking, oh, great, Office got a platform, got some great technologies, got some great tools, but now what do you build in terms of these types of solutions? So as I showed you in those screenshots, these are all about building a custom ribbon. And to be very precise, we've now, when you look at Office, you'll notice that, how many people here are running Office 2007? Oh, great, that's great. So you'll notice you have the bubble in the corner. So basically the Chrome on the outsides of any Office application that has the new ribbon, it's actually called the Fluent User Interface. So that's when I call this the custom Fluent ribbon. That's what that's referring to. And as a side note on that, you don't have to only have Office to experience these custom ribbons. So we have the Fluent User Interface is fully licensable. So if you wanted to create your own application, let's just say you wanted to create the next killer Web 2.0 app, but you wanted that cool ribbon effect and all those Office elements, you can license the UI from us, and it's freely licensable. There's no cost or anything like that. And then you can take that same ribbon experience and provide it to your end users. So that's something that's also doable outside of the Office environment. Building custom task panes. You saw a couple of examples in the screenshots of being able to build, what we refer to as CTPs, and being able to expose whatever, whether it's a line of business data or whether it's Flickr information or whether it's web browsers, whatever else. You can embed just about anything that you can do in Windows Forms, you can do inside of a custom task pane. I've already kind of talked about the XML integration. Outlook form regions. You'll see a lot of examples of this in demos coming up here. Is the fact that, all those screenshots that I showed you, those are custom Outlook form regions. It's about taking email to the next level. It's building those custom apps. We've referred to it as a form region, but literally that form region is basically a user control. And that user control can be two things. It could be a base class .NET user control, or it can actually be a WPF user control. So all the things that you're learning about here this week, you can totally use natively inside of Outlook. Office Live services. There is a session, unfortunately I don't know the exact number of it, but it's being put on by Don Campbell and Rohit Puri. And they have the most compelling example of consuming Office Live services, building a very immersive experience online, but at the same time have this great Windows Presentation Foundation app that manages that online presence on Office Live. Totally encourage you to see it. I mean, it's a mind-blowing thing that they've built and really showcases that you don't have to just live in the browser to deal with Office Live. You can actually do that level of integration with Office Live to consume web service and everything else. I mean, Office Live is based on Windows SharePoint services, right? Microsoft Office SharePoint Server, based on Windows SharePoint services. Project Server, based on Windows SharePoint services. You should probably see the commonality that we're moving towards with a platform perspective. WSS is the core underpinnings of Office as a platform. Consuming generic web services, I think you guys probably get that. ASP.NET Web Parts. I mean, before in SharePoint Server 2003, as well as Windows SharePoint Services version 2, they were all about their own SharePoint web part framework. Nowadays, we do provide that backward compatibility to that, so you can still develop and use those same web parts that you may have developed. But nowadays, SharePoint, MOS, as well as WSS v3, they are all based on ASP.NET at the core. So if you know how to develop ASP.NET web parts, this is a perfect example of how you can use your current skills to be able to develop these types of solutions. Beyond web parts, I mean, if you just think about MOS and WSS itself, you can go ahead and build event handlers. You can go, I mean, this is a slew of customizations that you can do from a very server-centric standpoint. Customizing workflows, building info path forms that expose themselves in Word documents. There's all types of different customizations that you can even begin to think about from a server perspective. How do I build it? It's all about Visual Studio Tools for Office. Enough about that slide. Now, why do you want to build it with VSTO? The whole purpose of building it with VSTO is you basically get that rapid application dev experience. So I'm going to show you how to do a ribbon, task pane, and it's only going to take me 3 lines of code. And literally, I can build one of those sample applications with 3 lines of code. I mean, this is where we've progressed ourselves to. In the past, if I wanted to build a custom task pane, I had to use CTP Factory. Well, that was about 400 lines of code. Well, we've abstracted that so much now that I can implement ribbons and task panes in 3 lines. I mean, just the dev experience and being able to deliver that type of dev experience is amazing in terms of what you can then really focus on. You don't have to focus on 400 lines of code. You can focus on design, service consumption, architecture, making sure that you're building the right solutions. Also gives you a great opportunity to design something very rapidly, give it to a customer or whatever else, your end users, and say, does this meet your need? Without spending hours and hours and hours of dev time and then rolling it out to somebody for testing or view or review and then saying, no, this is not going to work. And then going back and spending another 20 or 30 hours trying to tweak it all back. This is what this experience is about for Office nowadays. It's giving the people what they want and taking a lot of the burden off of you, the developer time. So here's the ribbon, and these are all about customizing the ribbon. These are the different categories that we look at. We have individual tabs within the ribbon, we have control groups within the ribbon, and then we have individual controls within those groups. In this example, you can't really see it, but these are all of our stock tabs that we have. If you wanted to, you can develop a ribbon that will insert yourself in any one of these stock tabs, or you can go ahead and create your own. So you can create your own experience. You can create your own branding around it, put your own stuff in your ribbon, whatever else you want it to do. Custom task panes. This is a screenshot from one of the previous ones that I showed earlier. This is all about really using the real estate within inside of Office to expose your information, right? You can still expose information directly inside of a document or a spreadsheet or a presentation, but being able to allow people to browse stuff, drag and drop things, this is where the task panes come in. You want to be able to give them that opportunity to say, that's the piece of data I need. put it in this cell, or put it in this paragraph, or put it in this content control, and be able to just do a simple drag and drop action. Again, it's all about taking task panes, embedding them in the right applications, and being able to surface that data in a contextual fashion for that end user. Yay! So I just want to give you the precursor, though. So it's demo number 1, and then there's another demo. So we're pretty much done with slides. Yay. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and develop basically a custom ribbon and a custom task pane. We'll do it in a very stepped fashion, so you can kind of see building the ribbon, and then also wiring up the task pane so I can turn it on, turn it off, do whatever thing I want to. And also, I think probably the coolest thing that I actually have, and I didn't even mention it yet, is the fact that everything that you're seeing is based on Orcus. So how many people here have downloaded Beta 1? Great. So you might notice a couple of things. This is actually a much later build, and I'll throw out the caveat on Beta 1. So some of the stuff that you're going to see me do doesn't work in Beta 1, namely custom task panes. So by Beta 2, those will be working. If you want to do custom task panes, unfortunately, you have to go and use CTP Factory and write all the code yourself, which, sorry. And I have to say that I'm most impressed by the fact that I've run through these demos quite a few times, and Orcus is looking pretty solid. So again, you can see that I'm in Orcus. It's the same kind of experience that you typically have with Visual Studio itself. I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. So I've already, since I've done this thing so many times, all my stuff is based off .NET 3.5. You can see now, how many people have done Office development in the past? Okay, so you're probably familiar with looking at what are the add-ins that we supported, all those different types of things. So you can definitely notice a difference with Office now. So if I pick 2003, now I still have all these same things. I can do PowerPoint add-ins, I can do Visio add-ins, Word add-ins. One of the biggest differences that you'll notice between the 2003 2007 world in Orcus is the fact that and I totally apologize for all these crazy names that we have. Visual Studio Tools for Office 2005 2nd edition only allows you to create application-level add-ins. And what I mean by an application-level add-in is if I fire up Excel and I've created an add-in, that add-in is exposed across that application. I could open up 10 spreadsheets, and that same add-in would apply to all 10 spreadsheets. What we've done in Orcus is it now gives you the ability to do document-level add-ins. And what I mean by document, going back to a previous comment, it's about spreadsheets, it's about PowerPoints, it's about Word documents. So now in Orcus, I can create a document-level add-in. So if I wanted to create, for example, an invoice in either Excel or Word, and that particular invoice fired up, my add-in is exposed. If I shut that document down, and then I go back into Excel, you don't see it because it does not have that associated document or document template to actually activate that add-in. So this is another thing that we've added. In addition to that, we've also added a number of add-ins that you can develop now that's supported directly from Visual Studio itself. So the first thing that we're going to do, I guess we'll do Word. I don't want a Word document add-in. We're going to do a Word add-in. So now, right now, okay, good, you can see that good. So right now we have just the basics of the add-in, right? There's nothing, the thing's not going to do anything. I could fire it up and it's going to show up inside of Word in terms of the Trust Center. And I can see that it'll be a COM add-in added in there for Word, but it really doesn't do anything. So the first thing that we want to do is to go ahead and add a ribbon to this. So these are all the C# items that, and you'll notice this if you go and you use Orcus, that if I pick a particular app add-in, only the things that are applicable to that add-in am I going to be able to add to my project. So in this case, this is both the ribbon designer and ribbon.xml, right? So this is my basics for ribbon support. Now, one thing I do want to show you very quickly is if I'm going to go ahead and pick the old way of developing this, right? So this is the way that you can develop ribbon customizations today inside of Visual Studio 2005 Second Edition. So you kind of get stuck, number one. So now you can kind of see, now I'm in my ribbon class, I've got a bunch of stuff, and I've got this thing, probably the biggest thing to focus on is callbacks. Right? So I have this callbacks that I can use to capture my events against my buttons, against my toggle buttons, all those different things. So you'll notice one big thing and a difference when I go to the visual designer of this. Right now, I have to do all this work myself. Right? If I create 10 buttons, I have to do all callbacks myself. I have to code everything myself. If I want to customize the ribbon, I'm stuck in XML land, right? So I have to know the tags. I mean, we do have IntelliSense for this, but I have to sit down and do all this work. It would be nice if I just had the ability to go ahead and do all this visually. This is what gets me from the today experience of doing 50, 60 lines of XML, bunch of lines of code that I have to manually do inside of my callback section. Now, if I kill this, and I'll actually go ahead and add the visual designer. This is a huge advance. I mean, I absolutely love this. There you go. Now you're looking at a ribbon. So now I can begin dragging and dropping controls on that ribbon. So you'll notice that if I fire back up my toolbox, I now have this new section called Office Ribbon Controls. So these are the controls that I can drag and drop onto the ribbon to begin creating the experience that I want my end users to have. So if I create a button, I can add new groups. I can add anything I want in any one of these groups. I have full properties so that I can go ahead and actually use the properties that I want. Now, all of the stuff that I'm doing here just by setting some properties and dragging and dropping controls, that whole experience today in Visto 2005 SE is all manually coding, right? So while I'm sitting here as a designer potentially, and I'm doing the XML piece, I'm coding this all up, I'm firing the app up, I'm seeing what it looks like. Oh, I don't like that. Close the app down, stop debugging, go back in, tweak the XML. Keep constantly doing this until you get the same design that you want. Now, it's what you see is what you get, right? You're developing this live, and you basically just deploy this. So I'm actually going to set that really threw me off for a sec. Like my mouse was way over here. So I just cut out one of the things from one of the MIX logos. So I put that on my button. I can add key tips. I can add whatever things that you would want to when you think about developing a typical control. So I can say just click me. So now here's the other cool thing is now look, I just double clicked on my object and I get my callback function created for me. So I don't have to do any of this work myself anymore. So if I just fire this up, and actually this is where my add-in is. These are other add-ins that I've created. So right now, this adds it in to the add-in tab, right? So this is the difference between the one that I just created shows up in basically our stock embedded add-ins tab. If you have an existing 2003 COM add-in that you've created, you don't have to really do anything to it. You can go ahead and use it in Office 2007. The difference is that that COM add-in that you've created today, based on Office 2003, this is where it'll show up, right? So there's no customization to it to say, oh, create my own tab for me, things of that nature. You would have to restructure your COM add-in to support that. It's not a ton of work, but this is the difference of the one that I just did is in this tab, but I could have easily done this custom MIX07 tab that has very similar functionality. So right now, thing doesn't do anything. So I haven't written one single line of code yet. Next thing to do is to go ahead and add a user control. So just to make the user control a little bit interesting, we'll just throw a web browser control onto it. And I'll change this to MIX. So right now, if I even fired this app up, that custom task pane, or actually user control, which will be implemented as a custom task pane, nothing will show up. It's not wired up to anything. It doesn't know how to make itself visible, nothing. So what I do need to do is in the add-in itself, so I'm going to, whoops, before I do that. So I'm going to go ahead and use, so once I include the namespace for tool support for Office, this is where now I begin having ribbons and task panes available to me. So now I'm going to go ahead and define my ribbon, or my task pane. So there's my custom task pane. I'm just going to call it CTP. Inside my ribbon class, I'm going to go ahead and double click on that button that I created that little image next to. And then I'm going to go ahead and say Word add-in 3. There's my CTP. Now that's odd. Okay, what's going on here? That's odd. Okay, something has gone a little wrong. But in lieu of time, I actually want to move on a little bit. But this is something definitely went wrong here, because this should be working just fine. But to kind of just talk about this, and you'll actually see some of this in the next demos as well, is the fact that if I would have wired this up, I could have exposed the task pane, and basically all you would have seen is MIX07 show up in a web browser, and then I could have wired those two things up so that it'd be visible and non-visible. The next two demos that I'll show you are basically pre-built because they're extremely comprehensive. So the first one that I'm going to show you is the sales-oriented one, which basically is exposing line of business data back into Outlook. Now this one has several things. It's got a bunch of different custom controls. It has a custom task pane. It has custom ribbon elements that expose themselves inside of stock tabs. And really the whole thing about this is there's multiple pieces to it. There's a new RSS reader that I've included. I've included ways to do my sales forecasting, and I've also included ways of integrating with Live and also my line of business data for the different sales leads that I do have. So there'll be a bunch of different components that we'll walk through. In terms of the custom, like the custom widgets piece, which is for my sales information, this is actually a WPF control. There's all the XAML for that control. This will actually show up in a custom Outlook form region. I've also got the sales leads. So this is basically a data grid that has a web browser control at the bottom of it that'll take any input from my grid of sales information using the location from those people, and it'll map it into Live so that it'll actually show up. So this is my tricky demo, because if there's an email in here, and this is actually my real email, if it's an email in there that has my name in it and the sender, I was telling the guys about this earlier. I think this one will be okay. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to open up this message. So there's a couple of things to notice. So I have a custom form region down here already. This is one that I created earlier. So basically, this just exposes the MIX website. So I can go ahead and close this. But you'll notice right up here, so I'm looking at my message right now. But now if I want to go ahead over and look at my sales leads that possibly pertain to this message. So the way that I built this add-in, so if I go back into my sales leads, oops. Oh, where did I put that before? So the way I built this was I've actually hard-coded my name, right? So that way any email that comes in that has my name in there, this sales information would be exposed. Otherwise, I would have to rely on other people sending me mail that's based on this. So when I go back to that email message, and I'm sitting in here looking at it, I can say, oh, this is great. So I'm thinking about this as I'm the person that's going to be managing some of the sales information. I could be a general manager, something of that nature. So if I click on my sales leads, now I basically get that information above in that grid is being pulled from a database that says these are all the sales leads that, in this case, I would be associated to. So that way, if I was the manager reviewing this information, I could go ahead and see who this person was working with, what places that they were going to go. So what I can do is if I pick, so I have full sorting and everything else on the grid. If I picked someplace in the U.S., say Oregon. So now this thing is actually going ahead and integrating to the point of a little bit of round tripping. There we go. So now you can see that down here, I've actually mapped this person's address. So if I multiple clicked, I just don't want to do it because of the round tripping. If I clicked on multiple locations, it'll actually build me a route to say if I have to go visit these people, this is the best route that you could potentially take to do all of those visits to those customers. This is a primary example. I mean, again, this is very enterprise-oriented, but this is a perfect example of really taking cloud services and integrating them and really helping your end user do something. One of the other things that I'll show you that I added to this was blogs. So anybody here follow Mike Fitzmaurice's blog? Your hand goes up for everything. I love that. So what's one of the biggest problems with blogs is the fact that, well, Mike is extremely verbose beyond that, is the fact that if I want to really go see this blog, I have to go to my email, I have to click on a link, fire up a browser, and then look at that blog. With the add-in that I developed, if I say view article, it's going to take me out there. But why not just have that same experience? Why not just have that same experience inside of my message itself? So now I can see his core article, but at the same time, I can go directly in to his blog, and I have not left email. I'm still in the context of doing the work that I've been doing. I don't have to go out to another application. That's what doing these types of apps inside of Office is really providing. This has nothing to do with enterprise anything. This has to do with consuming RSS feeds and building a custom Outlook form region that allows you to do that. And speaking of custom Outlook form regions, one of the things that I can show you really quick is in order to just build a very basic custom form region. So I go ahead and pick create an Outlook add-in. Once I'm inside the Outlook add-in, I can go ahead and say add a new item, expose the items until you get this. Now I can go ahead and pick Outlook form region. I can go ahead and add that Outlook form region, which puts you into a wizard. The interesting thing about this that I wanted to point out was this wizard will allow you to just drive through and create a custom form region, but at the same time, if you've made existing investments inside of forms, inside of Outlook themselves today using the Forms Designer, you can import these inside of this form region so that you can take the work that you've invested time in today and be able to import it and leverage that same work inside of Office 2007. So we'll go ahead and create a new form region. This is the interesting piece. It's like you can create an adjoining form region. You can replace the entire thing. You can even replace the entire form so that you can create your own custom application. We'll stick with an adjoining form region, which basically shows the message and then the form region at the bottom. We'll just go ahead and keep it as form region 1. At the bottom, it allows you to select a bunch of different properties to say, do I want this to show up in my reading pane? Do I not want it to show up in my reading pane? So it gives you some opportunities to customize that. This is probably the greatest piece, is the fact that these are all the custom message class types that we use internally for Outlook and Exchange. So these are the ones that are defined for tasks and calendars and basic messages. But at the same time, if you decided to use your own custom message class, and you can kind of see an example here where they have ipm.post.contoso. So Contoso being the fictitious company name. If you have custom message classes that you have, you can place that here, do the interception in the form region, and then actually expose whatever you want in that form region based on your custom message class type. So it gives you some great opportunities to really use email as an interception mechanism to expose some rich applications or services to people that are actually working in their email. So if I say finish, now again, I'm basically using all the same things that I would as a .NET developer. I can drag and drop controls on here, fire it up, and then I've got my form region done. Again, I mean, we're talking, I haven't written one line of code. If I run this, it'll show up. There's nothing there to do. But it gives you, it's just that whole rapid application dev experience that allows you to build these types of applications. So, and finally, on to the Flickr demo. So the Flickr demo is pretty comprehensive. Just in case anybody is not aware, you might very well be aware. If you go up to Flickr, you'll have an area called Flickr Services. So Flickr Services allows you to sign up for the developer API. So what you do is just follow the basic steps of getting the, you have to get what's called an API key. If you get that API key, then you can go ahead and begin consuming Flickr services, content, whatever else that you want to from Flickr itself. Another interesting piece for this is if you go, not Wikipedia one. So this is the Flickr services. This is their defined API methods. Pretty cool thing at the bottom, or pretty close to the bottom, is you'll see this Flickr.net. This is a Codeplex project, so that you can very quickly, if you sign up for your API key, then you can go ahead and use the Flickr.net API library to begin consuming those services directly. So you don't have to worry about doing all that wrapper work yourself to wrap the API. Just sign up for that key, and then you'll be able to use some of these services as well. So this is the demo. Probably some basic things to show you. This doesn't look like much, but you'll notice a very big difference once we get into Outlook. This is a standard. I mean, this is all XAML, WPF control. It's got some nice gradients and stuff when I bring those photos in of the particular person that I've associated to a Flickr account to inside of my contacts. So this application uses a WPF control to show the photos, as well as we have a custom tab that we've built that actually shows static photos being pulled from Flickr. This is the custom form region that'll actually expose those photos. Inside that form region, there's an element host control that actually hosts that WPF control. And then this final piece, which is an addition to the contact. So this is a custom Outlook form region that shows how to take a contact and associate a Flickr account to it. So we've put in a custom Outlook form region into the contacts element, as well as one into the message itself. So again, I'm back into my email. So this is one of my friends, Avi. So if I double click on Avi, oops. Oh, I knew you were going to do this to me. Wow, that's interesting now. Oh, you know what? So for anybody that doesn't know about the Trust Center, this is basically where all of your add-ins are defined so that you can either turn them on or turn them off. Oh, my Flickr demo is in there. I absolutely love demo hell. That is amazing. Well, at least my mix form region shows up. Let me go, and I want to try. I've got a few instances of Outlook running here. Okay, everybody turn your head. Persistence pays off. So now you can see at the bottom I have a custom Flickr viewer. So this is actually pulling the Flickr content directly from Avi's Flickr account and showing me his latest photos that he's posted up there. Now if I were to go and look at Avi as a Outlook contact, you'll notice at the bottom I have my Flickr account associator. So if I had somebody else and I wanted to create a new contact, I can very easily, so like mine is MIX07 in Vegas, and I hit associate. This is actually doing a web service call to Flickr and associating my account to this particular contact. So that way when my email message comes in, it'll actually show those very photos to the person that wants to view that information. So that pretty much takes care of some of the demos. Switch back over to PowerPoint. We have about 12 minutes left, and I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask some questions, but from a key takeaways perspective, it's really thinking about Office as a platform. I tried to show you several examples of kind of line of business, enterprise-oriented stuff, looking at more Web 2.0 style stuff with some of the live integration and some of the Flickr integration. Thinking about the Office business applications, as I call them, the OBAs. You're thinking about them as the next generation of apps to really be developed on the platform. VSTO is the tool of choice to do this. If you had to do this stuff on your own, it would take a lot more work than what I've shown you today. Resources. Again, this is kind of the plug for the content that we develop. And we're always interested in feedback. Probably one of the greatest things that we have done with MSDN is we have this thing called the community feature. So that, and unfortunately, it's like located at the bottom of the page, and sometimes it's a long scroll. But if any piece of content in MSDN, you can tag it with your own response. So in our SDKs, If there's something in an SDK that you want to tag as incorrect, or I found this valuable, or hey, I did this differently, you can tag all that content across MSDN. So any of the content that we publish, you can add things to it. This sucked, this helped me a lot, it'd be great to have more articles like this. That gives us, we take that feedback and mine that feedback all the time to make sure that we're developing the right stuff. In terms of our latest edition, which was just at the end of January, is we delivered what's called the Visual How-To Center. These are very, very short videos, between 5 and 8 minutes in length, cut and paste code that allow you to get running. Ribbons, task panes, business data catalog, file formats. By the end of June, we'll have over 100 of these available, and it's all about different ways of developing Office 2007 solutions. The whole point of this site is to be very fast and very quick helping you develop stuff. I mean, how many people here really have time to read a 50-page white paper and go through several hundred lines of code to figure something out? We recognize that that's a big barrier for people, and that's why we've really focused on kind of what we call office building blocks. And these are the core elements that will help you develop solutions. And we will be taking these once we have a mass of them, and we're going to show you how to stitch them all together to actually build an Office business application from an end-to-end scenario. Example would be budgeting, being able to take a lot of our how-to work and show you how to build a budgeting application. These are all the blogs. These are mostly people focused on Office business applications and pretty much along the lines of form regions and task panes and ribbons and all those types of things. This is getting the bits. So this is really related to a lot of the Visual Studio stuff that you saw. These are how you can get their current bits, which is Visual Studio 2005 Second Edition, as well as a link to download Orcus stuff. And with that said, that's 9 minutes for Q&A, and I totally appreciate you guys being here today. Any questions? Questions? Great, I answered everything. Oh, right there. You mean Outlook 2007? So the question was just to do a repeat was adding or importing business contacts with images inside of Outlook 2007. Can't answer that because that's not something I typically do, but offline I can probably sit down and show you. So, great, one question. That is just awesome. I've bored you to death or just answered everything. Oh, look, see, I knew that was going to prompt some questions.
Can you kind of walk through the distribution of one of these things that you built for the end user experience?
That's actually a great question. I didn't include much of that content because it's a fairly long conversation. So the difference that you're seeing, and it's a great thing to mention about Orcus. So there's a big difference between Visual Studio 2005 Second Edition and what we're going to come out with in Orcus. So Second Edition experience is basically building everything up, creating your own MSIs, deploying them out in the normal app fashion that you would, right? In Orcus, if, for example, the Flickr demo, in Orcus, I can create that as a click once installation. So I can basically create my click once installation, post it onto a file share, onto a website, whatever I want to do. And then when that person wants to do that installation, it is a true click once installation. It'll bootstrap everything, it'll give you the runtime, it'll give you the bits, and it'll make everything show up. It's a humongously different experience between what you have today in terms of fully available product for development and deployment versus what is coming in the future. So that's a big difference in terms of that deployment experience and that end user experience. So it's the same thing. Once that Click Once app is up there and they've downloaded and installed it, if I make a change to that Flickr application, they'll just get those bits.
So can you not embed that Click Once inside the
No, no. I mean, you wouldn't want to do that. You wouldn't want to do that just from a distribution standpoint of make it available somewhere that you know is always available, right? And then that way, that service endpoint, they can always pull that information back down.
So you have to send a message out to users saying there's this cool new add-in.
You could send a message, or you could use SMS. I mean, it really, I think a lot of it depends upon who your user community is and what kind of infrastructure they have. I would see something like that Flickr app would be something available on somebody's website, somebody's blog, something of that nature. For that type of application. The sales application, that would probably be something in internal, maybe on a file share, or maybe even deployed via SMS. So the next time that person fires that app up, if we've changed something, it just gets the bits and pulls them down for them, and you're always live and up to date. Also gives you that great rollback functionality, so if you wanted to roll back to a previous version, you can do that as well. Okay, is that it? I've given you, go ahead.
So, in looking at some of your demos, where you had an Outlook focus, and kind of looking at some of your slides around, what's the architecture slide for OLA solutions moving forward. And, with SharePoint being the core and having a lot of new capabilities in SharePoint 2007 around info platform services, Excel services, things of that nature, my question is kind of targeted towards kind of a future perspective. Because Office is now trying to embrace the web, and we have killer apps that are out there. Microsoft, you think about from the perspective of email, there's Outlook, but then there's Outlook Web Access.
Yep.
As a part of the product group thinking, have you guys thought about extending that Vista capability where I could build value-added add-ins or customizations inside of Outlook, the client, and then publish that through Outlook Web Access, so that customers can take advantage of that capability, where they may not necessarily have, Office 2007 deployed on all the client workstations, but, they're running the latest version of Outlook Web Access using Exchange 2007. On top of that, in addition, have you guys been thinking about that? And on top of that, have you guys thought about, from a Vista perspective, a lot of the rich client capabilities that you can introduce in client applications through services like info platform services and like Excel services? Have you thought about providing the appropriate machinery that allows us to publish those type of rich applications within the context of a browser? So kind of taking the Excel services capability that's available today and a lot of the investment that we're making in developing these rich client-based applications and somehow melding them even further to be housed within a browser to make these true dynamic applications, taking advantage of technologies like Silverlight.
So I'll repeat your question in short form. Has Visto and Office taken into consideration from an architecture standpoint? If I'm writing VSTO solutions that are very client-focused, can I deploy that into a server environment and have basically the web pick that up, and instead of rendering a custom task pane as a window form, actually rendering a custom task pane that's something that could be consumable in OWA? That same experience, that same ribbon, that same task pane type of experience. The answer is that have we thought about those things? Yes. Are they planned? To be honest, we're in the planning stages of the next version of Office, and don't really know what's going to fall out and what different things. But if you just look at the areas that we're going into with Office Live, and to your point as well, InfoPath form services and Excel services, we're definitely thinking about these types of things. Excel services does give you a little bit of that, right? With the parameterization, so that when you push that up, you do have that little task pane to the right that lets you tweak some of the numbers and recalc and stuff. That's probably a very first generation approach to it. But it's great feedback and totally appreciate it, and that's something that I can take back to the team as well. With that said, I've given you back 1 minute and 24 seconds to your morning. So again, thanks a lot for your time today.